Hey everyone, it's Blake, and welcome in to today's episode of the 411 on Wrestling Podcast. On today's episode of the podcast, it's all about AEW Full Gear, as Andy Perez, the host of Dissecting Dynamite, joins us to talk about everything with this AEW Full Gear card. On Saturday, we make our predictions for every single match. We preview all the big storylines with these matches and some of the potential surprises we could see from AEW Full Gear. It is a stacked card. You hear us say that many times. Another thing you hear us say in this episode is I don't know, because there is a lot of unpredictability when it comes to some of the ways that these storylines could play out, how some of these matches could unfold, and I think that only adds to the excitement for this show this weekend. So let's go ahead and jump into the conversation with Dissecting Dynamite host Andy Perez. All right, as promised, our guest today is Andy Perez, and if you're hearing us, if you watch the 411 Mania's YouTube channel, Dissecting Dynamite, which of course Andy is the host of, hey, we actually just recorded our thoughts on AEW Dynamite for Wednesday's show leading into AEW Full Gear on Saturday, and now back in audio form. Andy, you're back here, and we're getting ready to discuss Full Gear in more depth rather than just looking at it from an AEW Dynamite standpoint.
Yep, we are right back on it, and I'm excited to be, because Full Gear is shaping up to be an amazing show.
It is. I was on the press media conference or whatever for Cody on Thursday, which we're recording this, and he said, he thought it was certainly one of the best cards they've had, if not the best card they've had, and you and I kind of talked about that a bit on Dissecting Dynamite. We thought it was just top to bottom. I mean, it's really good, and there's a lot to like here, and so let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to do our preview. We're going to make our predictions. That way we can look back and either gloat about our predictions or sob over the fact that we had no idea what to expect from some of these, and I think some of these are going to be harder to predict than we think, right? So
yeah, most of the time it's me looking back and seeing how dead wrong I am. I've never bragged to be a booker in the past, and I don't plan on starting now, so we'll see.
Well, the betting odds are out, just for everyone out there. They did release the betting odds, which I have never been one that's bet on wrestling pay-per-views, but I know a lot of people who have. This is a hard one to bet on, as you'll see as we go along. I think some of these matches are really hard to call. Actually, I would say the majority of these matches are really hard to call. But we'll start with the buy-in, Andy, because we talked about this on Dissecting Dynamite, and we're going to put the link to that in the show notes. If you hadn't had a chance to watch that, go watch our thoughts on the show on Dynamite on Wednesday. But of course, before Dynamite, this match was added to the AEW Full Gear card, and that is Serena Deeb defending the NWA Women's World Championship against Allysin Kay. That's going to be on the buy-in. Andy, this is one we said kind of came out of nowhere, because it seemed like they moved the match we're going to talk about in a minute with John Silver and Orange Cassidy to the actual main card, and so they replaced the buy-in with this match. And you and I talked about it quite a bit, about the state of this AEW women's division, and it seems like, it's sort of like matching it in terms of the NWA women's division and what they're trying to do with that title specifically. And now you've got this match here on, basically the pre-show. What do you think heading into this one? It's certainly not one that really has much of a build, because it was just kind of thrown on there. But it's clear, that AEW is going to continue pushing this NWA women's world title, especially since one of their own now, Serena Deeb, has the title.
Well, even if it's thrown on without a build, that makes it built just about as much as the actual AEW women's title match too, unfortunately. And we've actually been talking how the NWA title, the NWA women's title, has felt more important than the AEW women's title over the past few months or so, especially with the tear that Thunder Rosa had. But Serena Deeb has become somewhat of a mainstay within the division, really a veteran hand in the women's division here at AEW, and I feel like it's a bit too early to dethrone her. So even with the small amount of build this has, I think Serena Deeb will probably come out on top. But nonetheless, I'm excited to see Allysin Kay get this type of exposure. I'm not sure if you were able to see her match versus Thunder Rosa back at NWA Hard Times. Was that the show?
Yeah, fantastic match.
fantastic match. So I'm excited to see what she can do against Serena Deeb on a large scale like this, and putting them up on the buy-in to where everybody can see it for free. That is quite a bit of exposure for both of these women, and I'm excited to see what they can do with it.
Yeah, it's important to point out because I think sometimes people forget that about, well, it's why is it on the buy-in, put it in a spot to where it's actually on the main card, maybe gets more exposure. I don't necessarily agree with that because when you're trying to push it, like you said, the buy-in's free. Like, you don't have to pay anything to watch this. And so I think this could draw a lot of people in, and you get a lot of eyeballs on people who are getting ready to either watch the pay-per-view or, you know what, maybe they're not. And this is just something they can watch and seek out and say, okay, well, at least I get to watch this match, even if I don't want to pay for the pay-per-view, which I think if you're an AEW fan, you definitely want to pay for this one because it's loaded, like we said. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm picking Serena Deeb in this one, and because the timing is interesting, as we know, because Allysin Kay just announced like 2 days ago that she was, basically a free agent now and gone from NWA, and now she's getting the title shot. So maybe, I don't know, maybe she becomes someone that AEW looks at as a potential full-time addition there to their women's roster. We'll see. Either way, should be a good match with that one. All right, let's jump into the main card, and we're going to start with the match we just said that got moved from the buy-in to the main card, and that is Orange Cassidy versus John Silver. As you know,
here we go.
I mean, this is when it starts,
Big John.
right? This is when it starts. Like, this is when the actual show starts. I'm surprised we're talking about this first, to be honest, because in my mind, this is the main event. This is the one that everyone's paying for. This is what I'm paying my $49.99 for right here. I just, we talked about this on Dissecting Dynamite about how AEW's done such a good job of letting the personalities just flow with guys. And I mean, what better way than this? Like, what better two examples than Orange Cassidy and John Silver, who are just such different types of characters, and they have not done anything to sort of stifle what Orange Cassidy did before he came to AEW. He's been the same guy since. He's evolved into much more than what he was when he started. And now with John Silver, he started as just a sidekick for the Dark Order, and now you could honestly argue that he's probably the star, if not Brody Lee. But man, this should be pure entertainment. I don't know if this is going to be a 5-star wrestling match, but 5-star entertainment here for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll end up being 5 stars for Big Dave or not, but but for me, it'll be 5 stars in my heart. Yeah. Seeing John Silver really finding his rhythm, really being able to shine within this AEW machine over the past few months or so has been a joy, and putting up his character versus Orange Cassidy is sure to be, like you said, just an entertainment goldmine. And we've talked about it a bit on Dissecting Dynamite, but the power of being the elite, even in the time of a pandemic, John Silver is getting over, and he is really showing what a star can look like. But yeah, I'm very, very excited for this match. But when I'm thinking about this match at a storytelling basis, I'm thinking to myself that Orange Cassidy needs this win more than John Silver. He had two failures against Cody, lost a bit of momentum arguably since his feud with Jericho, and he's been in a bit of a holding pattern for a little bit now before they thrust him into this mini feud with John Silver. I think Orange Cassidy needs it more than John does.
Well, it's going to be hard for me to say, but I agree with you. I'm going to have to pick against my man John Silver here, because that's something I was going to bring up, because a lot of people were wondering why they put Orange Cassidy in that spot back-to-back times if he wasn't going to win one of them. And of course, the second one he lost via shenanigans, because we had Silver interfere and you had Arn Anderson do his thing, and so it felt like, I don't know, like the rematch really didn't feel necessary at all when you think back on it, but I guess to lead to this it did. So maybe they have bigger ideas, bigger plans, but I think so too. I think Orange Cassidy has to win this match, because John Silver's going to be over no matter whether he wins the match or not. I mean, I just think he's still going to be someone that's very over, and the fans aren't going to just completely turn on this guy if he loses to Orange Cassidy. I think this is going to give you this is exactly what you want. Like, this is what, pairing these two guys together with their personalities and everything they do, like, this is sort of like the match you want to see. So Orange Cassidy should get the win here. I'll go with that too. We'll see if we got that one correct.
But what I want to know in this match here is is just where do these characters go from here? Because
Yeah.
they're both incredibly beloved characters, but John, he's quickly, might I say, outgrowing the Dark Order. What's the purpose of the Dark Order? Of course, they're there as a large domineering group within AEW, but also they're there to be behind Brody Lee. At
Yeah.
what point does John Silver end up detracting from that purpose? And at what point is he more beloved than he needs to be within this supposed heel group? I feel like John Silver has a lot of potential. I don't know how quickly he's going to grow, but he's shown that he really deserves a lot of attention within that group. And then Orange Cassidy on the other side of it, he's done huge things this year. Where does he go? Where does he go from here? What does his character development look like going forward?
Yeah, I brought this up to someone, but I think that when AEW has fans back full time, so you have a full audience, full arena, however you do it. We don't know when that's going to be, but I said the two biggest pops I think you could get in a full arena like return show would be Jericho's theme being, everyone singing Judas in the audience, which they're going to do no matter what. I said, and then it would probably be Orange Cassidy like winning the world title or something, because like you think about how everyone would just insanely, like everyone would lose their mind. But I think that kind of tells you though with Orange Cassidy, like I think you could put him in any of those spots, and sure, like people may get upset if like eventually, again, we're not saying this is going to happen within the next couple months or anything, but like way down the line, like if Orange Cassidy, if they put him in that situation, almost like I don't know, you think back to, and this is completely different, you're comparing, apples to oranges here, but remember back like when Triple H, I want to say it was against Jericho, of course, but I want to say that was either 2000, maybe that was 2000, 2001, when Triple H Jericho beat Triple H on Raw, and it was like one of those flash finishes, and they beat him for the title, and everyone just lost their mind. And then, of course, Triple H bullied Earl Hebner, whoever, into reversing the decision and all that. Like, eventually down the line, like, could you imagine, like, if you had Orange Cassidy in that scenario versus MJF or something, where
the amount of heat it would bring to an MJF or to a Jericho or just a monster heel in that spot would be insane. And I didn't even think of a scenario like that, but Orange Cassidy's character just so beloved, but also once he gets going in the ring, you can see that within the universe that they built at AEW, he can be seen as a threat to major contenders like Chris Jericho as well, because people underestimate his abilities.
Yeah, I agree. And the Jericho feud, like, just everyone thought that Orange Cassidy was going to be hurt the worst by this pandemic and saying, well, he has no crowd, no one's going to react, like, what's he going to do? And he's evolved so much into someone that, we've seen him have these good title matches, we've seen him with the Jericho thing, and so I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility that at some point down the road, and it may upset some people, but I wouldn't even mind seeing them say, hey, we're going to do this 1 week or 2 weeks or something and just roll with it and let everybody lose their mind. So we'll see. That's down the road. Let's talk about the AEW Women's title match. We just talked about the NWA Women's Championship. Hikaru Shida versus Nyla Rose. This is a match we've seen before. And Andy, I thought they had a good match the last time, although this one doesn't feel like it really has the build that the previous one had. And going back to some of Cody's comments in his press conference, he was asked about this and basically said, AEW it's a wrestling promotion, and that fans have been conditioned to want a storyline or a lot of drama heading into a specific match. But for him, someone who tries to focus on the sports-centric side of things, sometimes it's just a match. Like sometimes, and I understand what he's trying to say, because I do agree with him to an extent that you can't, like, every match isn't going to be Moxley versus Kingston. Like, you're not going to have that emotion, you're not going to have that drama. But I think the problem is that it's within the women's division, and people are already looking at AEW and say, we don't think they're doing enough with this division. Now, if this was another match elsewhere, if this was Cody versus Darby Allin, that history could sort of speak for itself. But this is another one of those matches where it's like, okay, we're trying to push the women's division forward, but is anyone really that overly invested in this match just because there hasn't really been much of a build to it?
That's the thing. At what point does that become a recurring negative trait within the women's division? I understand that if maybe a one-off pay-per-view or a one-off women's title match, if just a one-off, doesn't have any build. But if you're building to one of your largest shows of the year, one of your big four shows, and once again the women's division is left without a proper build, then it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
And I understand what Cody's saying too, but when some of Cody's entrances last longer than the entire build to a major women's match, then that's an issue. How much build did this match have? You had Nyla glaring in the ring at Shida after a successful defense. A couple weeks later, last night on AEW Dynamite, we had Vicky Guerrero cutting a 30-second promo on Shida. But other than that, where's the story?
Yeah.
It's disappointing, but like you said, it's sure to be a good match, a solid match, an entertaining match, just like their last encounter was. But it's just disappointing to be going into a big women's title match again without proper emotional pull.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, they did some stuff on Dark, but I think you have to understand that Dark is, a lot of people watch Dark. Like, they'll go back and replay it and it's fine, but, like, you have TNT as your platform here, and I think you just need to be able to do more with that on that platform each week. And like you said, I mean, even if it's 1 minute, I've said that, like, you could do it for 1 minute, like 30 seconds, like, and that's fine, like, but that adds up over time. You just have to do it regularly, and you have to do more of it to get people invested in this. This is a hard one for me to call. I think Shida probably wins. I'm going to pick her to win because I've told you I think the next feud there is to put Shida versus Britt Baker, and I think eventually the best way to do this is to put the title on Britt Baker, and that's not taking anything away from Shida, but I just think you need sort of a change of pace at this point because you've kind of proven that Shida's pretty much beaten everyone. Like, she's pretty much taken everyone out at this point. And so, what's next? And what are your, and I don't know, maybe that's maybe they bring someone in. Like, maybe that's one of the things. Maybe someone signs eventually and they go to that person. But I feel like your options are limited here if you go with Nyla, because I just don't know who else you put her up against that's going to feel like a legitimate threat to her if it's just someone on the current roster, I guess.
Yeah, I completely understand that point of view, and I was actually on board with you when you and I were discussing this match last night during Dissecting Dynamite. But I've been thinking about it a bit more lately, and the key difference between the first matchup between Shida and Nyla Rose and this one is Vicky Guerrero.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, Nyla definitely has a stronger character and presence currently, along with Vicky Guerrero, than Shida does. Shida has a whole bunch of course, she's really built up this reign, has had a bit of a monster reign, but there hasn't been much build around that reign, so there isn't much of an aura around it. And in my mind, the story of chasing a monster heel is a simple story to tell in a short amount of time, and to put Nyla in that spot again just makes sense if AEW does want to return to that route. But like you and I have discussed on many occasions before, Britt Baker is really the star of this division, and where would she stand? She's been doing her shtick for a while now, and I don't know if her character would work as a face against Nyla, but what I do know is that Britt Baker versus Vicky on the mic would be better than Vicky versus Shida on the mic. So I'm going to go ahead and hesitantly go with Nyla Rose for my pick. But like I said, with the lack of build going into it and with the lack of foresight going forward, it's a difficult match to call.
Well, and like I said this too, like, I see that point, because what if one of these surprises, like we're saying, I mean, we're gonna talk about this surprise theme throughout the show, because AEW is really pushing this shocking surprise type thing, at least with some of the stuff you see. And so obviously we'll get into that in a minute, but like everybody's brought up, like, Tessa Blanchard, of course, she's someone else that's out there that was obviously the face of women's wrestling there a while back before things kind of got out of control, and you just had her leave the way she did, and a lot of people wonder, would AEW AEW really, go that route? Well, I don't know. But I think that there's options for them out there, and I think that's what's frustrating. We talk about someone like Layla Hirsch. Sure, she's not a huge star at this point, but like you can see the foundation there. You can see what she could do in the future. And so I don't know. At least there is intrigue, I guess, in this, because we don't really know who's going to win this match, and maybe there's something coming out of it that we can talk more about and more of a positive light for the women's division. All right, Andy, let's go to the Elite Deletion match, because this is I think it's safe to say this is going to be the most unique thing on the show, because it's Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara. By the way, Sammy Guevara, Andy, of course, my Diamond of the Week. He was my guy. Thought he did a fantastic job.
Your guy.
Yes, yeah. I thought he was great on Dynamite, but I don't know that he's going to fare too well in this one, because it seems like this one, as we know, it's going to be one of these compound type things. It's going to be different. I would hope there's just going to be a lot of hilarious callbacks to other things. I know someone brought up the possibility that maybe the finish to this match is ultimately what we saw in that last match, even though, certainly the circumstances were not great, to where maybe they go up on top of something and then that winds up putting Sammy in the lake of reincarnation or something like that and gets thrown off in there. I'm not sure, but I feel like that this is going to be at least fun. I mean, I'll pick Matt Hardy to win this, but we know this is not just sort of your regular wrestling match. But I'm always fascinated by these, because I love seeing all the different callbacks and all the little Easter eggs you can find along the way that just make it hilarious.
Oh yeah, I've been a huge fan of these cinematic matches going back throughout the Broken Universe, but also specifically during this pandemic era. It's been fun to watch what WWE's been able to do with it, and now we're going to go back into the quote unquote Broken Universe with Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara. Their All Out match was arguably one of AEW's few low points throughout their first year. But I have a lot of questions going into this match. There's a lot of intrigue going into this match. How is Matt Hardy's character going to be used? Of course, he's pretty much dropped the broken gimmick. It says it isn't as fun to put on without the fan interaction. But JR said last night, AEW is able to routinely and safely pack 1,000 people into Daly's place, and they're expecting that type of crowd for Full Gear, I assume. Yeah. So does that point towards a return of a more theatrical character from Matt Hardy? But like you discussed, Sammy being your Diamond of the Week last night, Sammy has proven himself in the ring as well as in these more theatrical matches, like the Stadium Stampede. Not exactly a cinematic match, but still larger than life. So how is he going to fare going full on wacko against Matt Hardy? And this one's tough to call for me, because Matt Hardy, he won the match at All Out, even if he had that didn't he was victorious in their match at All Out. And I feel like I
think he could lose here, and you could see him, like you said at the beginning, I think you could see him lose this and then come back as like this completely different, like afterwards. Like I feel like that's an angle they could go with too.
Right, and that's the thing, and I hope that this is the end of the program between the two of them. Yes. Just because it's been a bit drawn out now, and I feel like Sammy has more to gain by winning the program. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go with Sammy on this one, and I'm hoping that it's as entertaining as you and I both think it'll be.
I hope so, and I think Sammy either way is going to come out of this. And we talked about that tag team match they had on Dynamite with Sammy and Ortiz against MJF and Wardlow. Like you could tell, like in that match, and I brought it up to you. I was like, man, Sammy's he's a heel, but you can see like future like babyface all over this guy just because he's that good. And I think with the entertainment factor, like he could come out of this match, like his stock could go even higher, even with something like this that's just so different and off the wall. But I think he's entertaining enough to pull it off. Man, I'm really looking forward to this. Like I think this is going to be a blast. And of course, Matt Hardy, he's been teasing it all over the place. And what he wrote on Instagram not too long ago was, I guess I don't remember when this was, but he said, in less than a week, the Elite Deletion will happen at AEW Full Gear, and I'm confident it will be remembered for eternity. So there's your sell. Eternity is going to remember remember this Elite Deletion match. We'll see. All right, let's talk about, we just mentioned MJF. Let's just jump into him now because it's MJF versus Chris Jericho. MJF wins. He is joining the Inner Circle. Man, Andy, we talk about unpredictability. I have no idea where they go with this, and I'm going to say that about a couple of other things here, but I don't. Like, I've been racking my brain trying to figure out, okay, how is this going to play out? You've seen MJF do some of the interviews, like saying that, he's not trying to turn the Inner Circle on anyone. Like, he just wants to be part of the group, and really just playing this up. Like, it's almost like he's setting you up for something big here, and I just cannot figure out what that's going to be. And I love it because I have no clue how this is going to unfold. I guess picking the winner, I mean, I guess you have to pick MJF, but I don't know. Like, I don't know how this, I'm just being honest. Like, this is probably the most unpredictable result for me on this entire card because I don't know where they go with this.
Oh, yeah. The story building up to this match has just been one of the most entertaining spectacles to behold within AEW's short time. The little musical departure that they had, the town hall situation, and just both of these guys just super charismatic, very, very amazing promos between the both of them. But that unpredictability factor is just getting me as well. There's been a lot of speculation online that the Inner Circle could possibly turn on Jericho, but I think that would maybe prematurely take away a lot of the dramatic tension within the group if MJF did have the opportunity to join. I don't think it would be the right time to turn Jericho. I think there's a lot of mileage left within the Inner Circle, and I think it's a more interesting story to put MJF into that group and see how he fares and see how the other members of the Inner Circle react to the whole situation and react to the power dynamic between he and Jericho. I think it's more likely that there's, and once again, I'm not a booker, so I think it's more likely that there's some sort of like mix-up when it comes to interference in this match that leads to an MJF win. Someone in the Inner Circle slips up when they're interfering and accidentally clocks Jericho rather than MJF, maybe like plants seeds of distrust within the group with MJF at the center of all of it. But what I'm really looking forward to when it comes to this match is that MJF really added another edge to the feud on this past edition of Dynamite. It was just kind of like a friendly matchup before, like a spar to see if MJF is worthy enough to join the group. But now there's some genuine heat behind it with MJF tackling Jericho through the announce display, and I'm excited to see how it all unravels at Full Gear.
That's a good point. I think that, a lot of people maybe look at this match as sort of the ending point of this. You feel like, though, the best way is just to, like, make this the starting point. Like, now, he joins the group, and like you said, then where do you go? Like, then you're really intrigued. It's like, okay, because every second you're thinking, all right, who's about to turn on who, or one of these guys going to turn on the other? I think that's the way to go, because then you get a lot more mileage out of this. And I think people too were thinking, well, why do you start with MJF versus Jericho? Because I don't think that's the ultimate destination. I think that's why they started with it, because this is like the start of the story to where eventually you're going to work towards, someone else being in one of these spots, because I think if you have him join the Inner Circle now, then, every week on Dynamite, you're looking around at all these different guys saying, boy, what does he think about him? Or what does he think about him? And then, then you start having that dysfunction between the original Inner Circle members. And I think that leads to more possibilities. So I'm very looking forward to this one, because I don't know which direction they go, but I do think you bring up a good point about maybe you get one of those botched interference type things. And Jericho ultimately is really pissed because MJF officially becomes part of the Inner Circle. And any way you look at it, though, right? Them two working together going forward, that's probably good for ratings too. So,
oh yeah, we have a couple demo gods, or we have one demo god. And do you remember what MJF called himself? A rating?
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to remember what it was. Yeah, but they are. I mean, they're gonna. And that just means more musicals too. So, wow.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
It's gonna be great. All right, let's get into what I think most people look at as sort of the big four here in terms of the championship matches on the card. And we hate knocking the AEW Women's Championship, but as we said, it's kind of where the division's at right now. But let's start with, which I guess this one's not actually a championship match, but we're kind of looking at it that way, right? Because it's such a match between two guys that are about to compete for a championship, and that is Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page. It is the finals of the AEW World Title Eliminator Tournament. This is the title tournament, the final that probably everyone expected. A lot of people tried to, I think, work themselves into thinking that AEW was not going to go this direction, when I thought from the very beginning this was the only thing that made sense, because now you don't just have these two going at each other, you have these two going at each other for a bigger prize, and I don't know. I think you give these guys, as much time as they want, and I feel like they're going to tell some kind of story here that's just going to be very fascinating. Andy, you and I talked about it on the Dissecting Dynamite show. I mean, they had the different promos, they had sort of the interactions they had on Dynamite, but they, have not been in a situation yet where you've just seen either one of these two snap. I think you're going to see one of these two just completely snap in this match. I mean, I think obviously everyone thinks it's going to be Omega, but I don't know. This one's hard to call here, because I'm going to pick Omega just because I picked it from the beginning, but I could see a situation where Page wins and then you see Omega just completely snap and just destroy him after that at some point or another. But I'm going to start, I guess, just pick Omega here since I picked him from the beginning.
Yeah, this is a match that I feel like everyone has been looking forward to for months. Just the gradual build in this story leading to this has just been amazing. However, similar to my thoughts on the Chris Jericho MJF match, I don't think this is necessarily our end point. I don't think Hangman's redemption arc ends here. We've seen a lot of interesting storylines planted throughout this, most prominently over the past few weeks. Kenny's arrogance, Hangman's anxiousness, his supposed alcoholism, and Kenny has shown to be confident in what he can do as a single star, especially in these tournament settings. While Hangman is still he's still shaken from the drama with the Elite. He's shaken from these big losses to FTR and then months back to Jericho. And I feel like he feels that he hasn't been able to prove himself as a big single star on a large stage the way Omega has been able to. And you and I have both said it many times. The money match, I feel like, is Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley.
Right.
Their face-offs in the past have just been magic, and with the added stakes of the title, the possibilities are endless. Where we go from there, I feel like the real end of the Hangman redemption arc months down the line is Kenny Omega with the belt, and Hangman is the one that dethrones him, because Hangman Page still has a long way to go. He's shown that with the way his character's been portrayed, especially on last night's episode of Dynamite, and it's going to prove to be an interesting story, along with a potential 5-star match, just an amazing wall-to-wall banger of a match.
Yeah, it will be. And yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I've said it many times at this point. I think it's, you go to Moxley, Omega, then you go to Omega and Page. I just think that's the sequence at this point. It just feels like the best way to go. And, you get that redemption story eventually. And I don't think if you hold off on the Page thing, I think that you still have plenty of time to continue telling that emotional kind of aspect of him, because we kind of saw that with that interview with JR on Dynamite. It's sort of like we brought up. It's basically him saying, hey, this is all I have, when talking about the drinking and stuff. And like, if I don't win this match and I don't win this title, like, I don't have anything else. And so what happens if he doesn't? Like, then where does he go from there? And that's why I don't know, like, maybe he continues being sort of that just sort of lackadaisical guy that's just going around, not just getting overly upset and everything. And then eventually, when Kenny wins the title, then he just loses it. And I think that's the way to go. Like, then you just build up all that tension, you build it up even more. And now you don't just have these two fighting for the winner of the tournament, like you have these two fighting for the belt. And I think that's just, that seems like the best way to go to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. But in any case, we are in store for a potential match of the year, and I think this I think this. Oh gosh, between this and Moxley versus Kingston, I don't know which one I'm more hyped for.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll get to that one here in a minute. But let's go to Cody versus Darby Allin for the TNT title. This is one that, like we said, we've seen these two before. We know the story arc here. Cody kind of played this up in his press conference a bit too, saying, hey, he kind of got in character for a second, basically saying, I've beaten Darby Allin, multiple times now. I almost feel like, other people should have stepped up, and I had a different challenger here. So he's kind of, we've said it many times now, Andy, it's like he's playing up those heel tendencies, and we know eventually there's probably going to come a time where he does, go to that point. But of course, the bigger thing here is, and you and I, we mentioned this on Dissecting Dynamite, the rumors about Sting, the shocking surprise. I keep going back to it because it's almost like I'm trying to convince myself that this is crazy, but then again, you tie it all together, and I could see why people go there, and it's not one of those where you just dismiss it and say, okay, well, come on, wrestling fans, calm down. But I can see why you would tie together all the potential things here. But I don't know, because, I was thinking back too, and I was thinking about this earlier about Dynamite, but Cody was really pushing that, face of TNT type of thing, and, basically saying, hey, I'm sort of that guy, and, who wants Darby Allin as sort of the face of TNT, and then you're thinking back, well, Sting was the face of TNT there for a while, and you look back at Nitro, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading too much into this because that's what we do when we have idle time and we're wrestling fans. We try to connect all this stuff. But either way, I think this is going to be a good match. And, man, I actually think I'm going to pick Darby Allin to win this thing. I think that's going to be maybe different than expected. But I think Darby Allin is going to win this title, and then I think we move to Darby Allin versus Ricky Starks eventually for this AEW TNT title. I really feel like that's probably the next direction because if Cody wins, I don't know, right? I don't know if, all right, let's just do this real quick, Andy. We're going to get this out of the way, so we're not going to bring up this rumor anymore. But, Cody versus Sting for the AEW TNT, I just don't see that. I don't, if let's for some reason say Sting shows up and all this other stuff, right? So I'm going to pick Darby Allin because I think they've sensibly built up the fact that Darby Allin and Ricky Starks just hate each other. And so I'm going to say this is Darby's big win. We've seen him sort of transform himself. Cody's talked about it. He's a different guy now than when they first, met in those first couple times. I think this is the win for Darby Allin, and I think we get something out of this match. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if this is where the shocking surprise comes, but I think there's going to be a big talking point coming out of this match.
I keep on trying to deflate my expectations when it comes to the whole Sting scenario, and people just keep on throwing some flames on the fire, and it's getting me hyped up, and you guys are getting me ready to be let down, and it's just painful. But nonetheless, I'm going to address the Sting speculation even more. Last night we had just gotten done speaking about it on Dissecting Dynamite, and I went on a little rant within that show, thinking, oh, there's no way it's going to happen. There's no way it's going to happen. I get off and I get on Twitter and I see Jim Cornette's posted a video, a little snippet from his podcast talking about potential Sting rumors. Everybody is talking about it, and usually when there's smoke, there's a fire somewhere. Like you said, the story leading in is that Darby thinks TNT doesn't want him as the face of the company. Cody says otherwise. Cody says that Darby doesn't have what it takes. He isn't the winner. He isn't the workhorse. Well, you know what? With him putting down Darby there, and with him putting down Darby again at the media conference, I can't see Darby not winning. Yeah. Because I mean Darby needs this win. He's had big matches before versus Moxley, versus Pac, versus Adam Page, versus Cody on a couple occasions, versus Jericho, and he's lost all of them. He's shown that he isn't a main event player just yet, and with the way Cody's been building it, that's what Darby's uphill climb is. I feel like Darby needs this win, and but from there, specifically those couple big matches with Cody, what makes this match different? If that ends up being Sting, I am going to mark out. I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to run into my bathroom and grab my white and black face paint and just go crazy night of. Because if Cody loses, it has to be a big moment. It has to mean something. Because he just took the title from Brody Lee a month ago. This could just as easily be Brody Lee versus Darby Allin, but Cody's positioned himself in this spot for a reason. And like you said, with all the lead-ins with Darby hanging out at the top of the arena near the rafters with the black and white vignettes that it's been showing for Darby Allin. Darby Allin wears, of course, this is a stretch at this point, but Darby Allin wears face paint too. So,
here's what I'm going to say. I feel like match placement is going to be really important here, because if for some reason this match goes on last, you want to talk about the Sting rumors now. If this is the last match on this show, I think before that match even starts, you're going to have people losing their minds thinking, okay, this is it. If we haven't had that big shocking surprise before this point in the show, because I think realistically, I don't know, it's hard to call because Cody keeps pushing about how, and he says it all the time, the TNT title is on the same level as the world title. That's how they view it. They don't really put, one above the other. They think it's the same title, basically. It's just a different name. And so I could see them putting Cody versus Darby Allin in the main event here. I could legitimately see that, although I think Moxley and Kingston, as we'll talk about in a second, it's been built up as well as anything on this show without question. And, it is your AEW world title, even though if you want to say both titles are even, people are going to look at the world title and say, that's your world title. Moxley's had it for this long. This feels like the big match. But I'm telling you, if for some reason they put Cody versus Darby Allin on last, social media is going to lose it. I'm just telling you, Twitter is going to lose their minds if we get into the show and we see Moxley versus Kingston at the, I don't know, at the 5th or 6th match or something. I think you could very well be leading towards Cody versus Darby Allin as the main event.
I honestly hadn't even considered that before you just said that, but I mean, in my mind, the build to this match hasn't leveled up against the Moxley Kingston, the Omega Page. So if they did put it in that spot, I feel like it would be a dead giveaway. That's the thing, that at least something huge was going to happen. What if this shows up in the middle of the show and then Sting shows up SmackDown? I mean, this entire show, top to bottom, has that unpredictability factor, but it also just has a lot of hype around a large amount of all the matches. So wherever this match shows up on the card, I'm sure it'll deliver in one way or the other. Whether or not we get Sting, and whether or not I'm going to be in my bathroom applying the white and black face paint, I don't know.
Well, another match people think, and I think this talk has been, less since the past couple weeks, but at one point, people were clamoring for FTR versus the Young Bucks to be the potential main event on the show for the AEW tag team titles. Of course, Tully Blanchard is banned from ringside. You've got the Young Bucks adding the stipulation now that if they don't win this match, they will never be able to challenge for the titles again. So recalling Cody from a year ago at Full Gear. But Andy, as we've said, and I want to reiterate this, I think this is going to be a really good match. I think it's going to be very entertaining. I don't think, going in, I don't have the expectations of the Revolution tag match. If you do, I would say I would probably kind of halt that a bit. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe because my expectations aren't as high, maybe they go in and just completely blow me away here. But the story, I mean, this is not anything surprising for most people, I think. It just hasn't been what we thought it would be. I think it's been very up and down. I don't know that the consistency has been there at all in terms of what we thought we would get from the story leading into this match. Some people have said it feels a little rushed because they haven't been able to properly tell the full story here, and it feels like it's just being put together, without really, it's just being put together with a lot of these stipulations added in, the last chance and all this. I feel like they're adding these stipulations because the build just hasn't been to the level that we thought it would be from a storytelling standpoint. What do you think? Because the Young Bucks add the stipulation of if they don't win, but I mean, the thing is too, like they've talked about how like Dave Meltzer brought up about Matt Jackson was legitimately injured, so he's actually hurt, and how they're going to be able to do this match because they've been doing matches, of course, and people are like, well, why if he's legitimately hurt with a partially torn MCL, and apparently it's like a thinning of the ACL. That was the report that people put up. I think it was here on Thursday. So. I don't know, like, what are you going to get the same type of match here that you would if Matt Jackson was 100%? Probably not. But I don't know where they're going here, and I think for like the Jericho MJF thing, that's one direction because that's more of an unpredictability that I'm sort of fascinated by. I'm interested in this too, but I just think the story hasn't been what I thought it would be.
That's the thing. A very inconsistent build leading into this match. At the start of it, you had the Young Bucks kind of heelish tendencies and overconfidence clashing with basically FTR's just win by anything attitude, their no nonsense approach, and their massive entry into the company. But their dynamic hasn't been as much of a no-brainer as I thought it would be. That added stipulation that you were talking about adds a bit of intrigue. If the Young Bucks lose, they never challenge for the titles again, kind of painting themselves into a storytelling corner there. But then, I mean, you would think with that stipulation that the Young Bucks would have to win. But like you said, Matt Jackson's real life injury being translated into a story injury as well. It's going to be a major story element within this match. I think even with that, I have to go with the Young Bucks just because I can't see a world where the Young Bucks never win the AEW tag team titles. I mean, they are arguably the best tag team working today, and that's what this match is supposedly built upon. If you look at the promo package put together on this past week's edition of Dynamite, but like we said, it really hasn't been necessarily built that way. But I guess I have to go with the Young Bucks. I that's the thing. I don't know how many times we've said I don't know over the course of this podcast already, but that is really a theme of this pay-per-view. But I'm going to have to go with the Young Bucks.
Yeah, I'm going to use the Eric Bischoff line again. I know Eric Bischoff's not everyone's favorite, but Eric Bischoff, he always pumps about the unpredictability. This card has unpredictability, but I'm going to pick FTR here because my question is this. If Matt Jackson actually has this torn MCL or whatever it is, like where do they go from there? Like it's surely if it's like a torn MCL and it's like you mentioned I think it was Dave Meltzer that reported this. I have to pull it up, but I mean if it's like a thinning of the ACL too, like that's not something you want to be out there having matches on every single week. I feel like that's something you need to take some time off for. Here's what I think. I think they go FTR here and they win, and then you maybe see, you can look at this. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, you know what? You can't go back to it for the titles because if the Young Bucks lose, like, how are they going to come back and win the titles? They're not going to get a shot again. So I don't know, man. I thought it was a no-brainer, but now I'm like, I don't know. I'm like trying to talk myself out of it. I'm going to pick FTR here. I don't know how. Like you said, the Young Bucks, maybe they're one of those teams that just really never need the titles because they're the Young Bucks. But at the same time, does that take away from some of their future feuds that they have in AEW, or are they not Cody? And do they eventually say, you know what, we're going to go full heel here, we're going to get our shots, and you can hate us for it, and we're going to win the titles anyways? I don't know. Maybe that's the direction they can go into. So I don't know.
And that's something else too. Like if the Young Bucks do backtrack on this stipulation later on, does that not only devalue the storyline that they were going with, but Cody's situation as well? What does that do for that? Because it's not like they were ignoring past stipulations. Jericho brought up on commentary just this past week, comparing this situation to his situation with Cody. So they definitely know what they're doing. They're not ignoring ignoring history here. So to see where they go with that stipulation is going to be very interesting.
Yep. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't know if eventually down the line we have Cody and the Young Bucks just full on heels and they're like, you know what? We're both going to go for the titles again. Forget everything we said. We're just going to make you all hate us and we're going to go for the titles. I don't know if they could pull that off, but I guess that's a possibility that they could do down the road at some point. But all right, let's get to the World Championship match. The one I think you and I are both looking forward to just maybe the most here. This is a stat card, but man, what Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston have done to build up this match has been pretty fantastic. This is going to be an I Quit match for the championship. I said it on Twitter. Like, I just think these two are literally going to destroy each other. Like, it's going to be absolutely. I mean, even like the graphic. You just look at the graphic that AEW's put together, and you just see these two guys' faces. Like, it looks like these two are about to just go try to just tear something down with their bare hands, and unfortunately, it's going to be each other that they're trying to tear down. Because I don't know, this is just going to be glorious. It is going to be glorious destruction. Because I feel like as soon as they hit the ring, like they are going to tear each other apart, and I am so looking forward to this.
Oh yeah, I cannot disagree on that one. The build to this match has just had levels of realism and intensity that you just don't often see in wrestling. Maybe in Academy Award-winning dramas, but not in professional wrestling. Like two master storytellers here, and with an I Quit match, they have the entire toy box to play with. I mean, like the story running into this match has been very clearly outlined. Eddie Kingston, he feels betrayed. He thinks Moxley has failed him as a friend on his way to the top of the industry, and now Kingston thinks it's his time to rise to the top. It's his time to gain that AEW title, and he is going to do anything in order to get there. And I'm right there with you. I think this match is going to be insane. Sometimes I see on Twitter, I see online of people ragging on Kingston's in-ring skills, saying, "Oh, he's a great promo, but I wish he was better in the ring," and I don't buy it. The realism and intensity that he has on the mic, it translates to his in-ring abilities. He is intense. He feels real. His facial expressions are great. They show anger. They show hate. They show frustration, brutality, desperation, and paired with Moxley's matching intensity and storytelling abilities, this match, I can't anticipate it anymore. And probably my most anticipated match of Moxley's reign thus far. And that's saying a lot because he's had a solid reign.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, and I think a lot of people would consider this the biggest match thus far, maybe the most anticipated one, because, he has, unfortunately, again, circumstances that he can't control, none of us can control, but he has been the champion during the pandemic era, and it's been different, because, like, I can think about that match with Jake Hager. Like, think about it, like, remember, there's nobody there at that point, like, there was 0 people around, and him having to have that match that they had, and you think back to all these others, like Brian Cage, Lance Archer. I think the Brody Lee match is probably still maybe my favorite of the group that he's had thus far, because I know it's one that wasn't necessarily long or maybe wasn't even the result some people expected, but I just think they had a really good match. But yeah, like I look at this and I'm thinking, Eddie Kingston, this guy whose story is 100% real. Like when he goes out and says, "Hey, I'm the guy who's come from nothing to get to this point, and I have to have this championship because I can't have anything else. Like I have to have this championship." He's exactly right. And you mentioned like the realism, like that's part of the stuff. And Cody brought that up too in the press conference, and he said it a lot of times before, but it is that sports centric approach where it's like, this guy is 100% real. I know he's within the realm of professional wrestling, but like he's real. What he's saying is real. And I can connect with that. Even if I don't necessarily like him, I can still connect with what he's saying. And that just makes it more believable. So, oh man, this is going to be wild. I just really think it's going to be wild. I mean, I'm going to ask your pick, Andy. I feel like we're probably both picking Jon Moxley here, but I'm going to say this too. If Eddie Kingston won this title, I would not be upset because I think it would be very significant just to see a guy like this. I would not be able to be upset about the fact that someone like this wins the world title. But I just think that Moxley's probably the winner here, like we said, to probably lead to Moxley versus Omega at some point.
Yeah, I am on the same page as you, and it says a lot. This match has has both of our emotions invested in it, despite being a relatively predictable match. I don't think a lot of people are going into this match thinking that Kingston's going to walk away victorious. That being said, if he does walk away victorious, think of the fanfare, think of the emotions online that's going to agitate. But yeah, I'm on the same page. I think it's going to be Moxley walking away with the victory and walking away with the title, but it won't be an easy victory. It is going to be a war. I'm sure there's going to be some major bloodshed here, and with an I Quit match, just anticipating the spots that they're going to be coming up with, it's sure to be brutal.
Yeah, I agree for sure. And man, like we said, what a card! Like this card is stacked. I mean, I am like pretty much every single match on this card. Like I'm invested in. I mean, some more than others, as we've talked about, but it's hard not to love this, and it's hard not to agree with the sentiment that this. I personally think, looking back at the other cards, like this could be their best card from top to bottom that we've seen thus far. I know they've delivered on a lot of their pay-per-views, and if they deliver on this one, given the card, we could be talking about it as being the best one. So we'll see. We'll see how it unfolds. One other quick question for you, Andy, before we wrap up. Our man Pac, he made his return on Dynamite. Do you think that we see him here? Do you think that was sort of a tease to where everyone thinks he's still stuck in isolation and all of a sudden he's back? And if you do think he is, what do you think the next move is for our friend Pac?
Well, before he left, he was paired up with the Lucha Bros, and you look at where the Lucha Bros are at now. They're in this family with Eddie Kingston. That's an option, and Pac has had a bit of difficulties with Moxley in the past. So I Quit match, obviously no rules. If Pac shows up in the middle of that I Quit match, then that would be very, very exciting. Also, say after the I Quit match,
Yep.
Moxley's sitting there victorious. That could be Pac's big return. Just tear apart Moxley when he's already been ripped limb from limb. Make him look like a freaking hyena. Make him look like a beast. But not only Pac, there's a bit of a intrigue when it comes to Team Taz there as well, and whether or not they're going to show up on the card. They say that they'll be there. Where they show up, nobody knows.
Yep, I wonder. Maybe they're the ones that gets involved in the Cody Darby Allin thing if we don't get our friend Sting there. But we'll see. I just, man, so much unpredictability, so many good potential matches on paper. This should be a hell of a show for sure. All right, Andy, we'll wrap it up with that, and of course, let everybody know about all the great stuff you're doing there with Dissecting Dynamite. We talked about the episode we did. If you want to, hey, if you haven't watched that yet, watch that. Then, maybe you're just kind of thinking, hey, I'll listen to the podcast, get everything you need from us there when it comes to leading up to this Full Gear card. But Andy, let everybody know where to find all your stuff and, all the great work that you continue to do there on Dissecting Dynamite.
Yeah, Dissecting Dynamite, it's 411 Mania's live AEW post-show breakdown. It's live every Wednesday on 411 Mania's YouTube channel directly following the end of Dynamite. We have some amazing guest hosts every week, including our host of the 411 On Wrestling podcast, Mr. Blake Lovell. But then in addition to that, you can follow me on Twitter if you want. That's Andy.P.Perez. And yeah, I love wrestling. I talk about wrestling, and I want to talk about wrestling with you guys. So make sure you reach out.
Yes, and Andy has something very exciting in the works that I was excited to be a part of. We're going to talk about that on a future episode of the podcast. So there's your teaser, but I promise you, you're going to love it. So we'll have Andy back on soon to discuss that. But Andy, thanks again, and look forward to watching AEW Full Gear on Saturday.
All right, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again to Andy Perez for joining us here on the 411 On Wrestling podcast. And as he said, be sure to check out Dissecting Dynamite on 411's YouTube channel. All you got to do is just hit that subscribe button. You can subscribe and get notified every single time Dissecting Dynamite goes live after AEW Dynamite each and every week. So be sure to do that, and be sure to check out everything going on at 411mania.com. Lots of great stuff going on over there. Of course, we'll have live coverage of AEW Full Gear on Saturday. You'll be able to read reviews, all the stuff you need for that show. And as we continue to mention the GoFundMe for Larry Zonka's family, we'll put that in the show show notes once again. Be sure to continue sharing that. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Any podcast app you use, search for 411 on Wrestling, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it. Search for 411 on Wrestling, and you'll be able to subscribe to the podcast, get all these episodes sent to you when they go up. For everything else, again, 411mania.com. Check it out. And thanks again for listening to this episode of the podcast, and stay safe. We'll talk to you next time here on the 411 on Wrestling podcast.